The Hudson Valley. Ultimatum. Billionaire. Dad's double secret. Stop everything. He called her weak and walked away. Years later, she returned. Successful, fearless, and she wasn't alone. Twin daughters. A secret. And he was the father. If you're ready for the ultimate corporate betrayal and a second chance at love, you need to watch this. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel to catch every single twist and turn. Billionaire Jonathan Reed had a life built on the cold precision of numbers and the unyielding strength of calculation. He was the summit of corporate power in the U.S., owner of an empire headquartered on Park Avenue, New York City. But in an instant, his entire unbreakable world was shattered by an unexpected truth walking through the JFK airport terminal, holding hands with the one woman he thought he had erased forever. Welcome to this story of betrayal, survival, and a love that arrived late. The 8-word hammer blow. The origin of the abandonment. Maya Collins never expected her life to turn 180 degrees because of a single sentence. A devastating 8-word decree, spoken with the surgical precision of the man she had trusted most. "You are weak and utterly useless," Jonathan Reed had told her, his voice as smooth as marble, his penetrating, disinterested blue eyes locked onto hers, with the same distant indifference he used to dismiss multi-million-dollar deals. The words struck Maya with more force than she could have imagined, not because they were elevated, but because of who had said them. Jonathan, the man who had plucked her from obscurity, who had noticed her silent efficiency among a sea of noisy interns, who had praised her sharp ideas and confided his fears to her on lonely office nights. He was the same man she had allowed into her bed, and eventually, into her heart. She admired Jonathan with a devotion that bordered on blindness. He was a living legend of the NYC elite, a self-made visionary, a millionaire before 35 who had turned a near-failed startup into an international powerhouse. Sharp, immaculate, always one step ahead. When he entered a boardroom in London or a meeting in Seattle, people stood taller, but Maya hadn't fallen for the business shark. She had fallen for the midnight version, the one who loosened his tie, who shared stories of his solitary childhood in a rented apartment, the one who, for a brief and dangerous time, allowed her to believe she was more than just another name on his contact list. When she discovered she was pregnant, it didn't feel like a disaster. It felt miraculous. She took 3 tests, all positive. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and euphoria. She pictured his reaction. Shocked, yes, but eventually protective. She had rehearsed the conversation 1,000 times, but when she told him in his minimalist penthouse overlooking Central Park, everything about her shattered. He didn't smile. He didn't even blink. He looked at her like a problem that needed to be solved or discarded. "I didn't ask for this," he said, taking a measured breath. "I don't want a child, and for God's sake, I don't want one with an assistant I barely know outside of work." She froze. He continued, as if discussing quarterly losses. "You knew what this was. Don't pretend you thought it was anything more. Handle it, Maya. Quietly, discreetly." She could barely breathe. "Are you asking me to terminate the pregnancy?" "I am saying I do not want my name associated with it," he countered, turning his attention back to his tablet screen. The conversation was over. That night, Maya cried in a taxi, watching the lights of Fifth Avenue blur. The next morning, when she went to work, her keycard was revoked, her email deactivated. Her position had been restructured. No explanations, no messages. Erased. 2. The silent strength in the Hudson Valley, the solitary battle. By the end of the week, the reality sank in. Pregnant with twins, unemployed, alone. Her parents, Traditional people who prioritized social image over compassion disowned her. "You've disgraced us. You made your bed." Maya sold almost everything she owned. The car, the designer bags, the furniture that made her feel part of that world of luxury. She terminated her lease in the city and left with a single suitcase and a growing secret under her coat. She stopped crying. She didn't have the energy. She found a small studio apartment in a quiet town in the Hudson Valley, a place where rent was low and no one asked questions. She got a used laptop and started working as a freelancer, writing reviews and editing manuscripts for small publishing houses. Maya didn't allow herself the luxury of rest. She was carrying 2 lives, and only she knew the cost of doing it alone. Her will became unbreakable. She had made a decision to fight for her babies, to be what no one, especially Jonathan, believed she could be. Not weak, not useless, indestructible. The twin pregnancy was hard. Her back ached, the nausea exhausted her. Every small income was measured to the penny. Nico and Nia were the names she chose, her little warriors. When the contractions started, Maya was alone. Her phone was glitching. She managed to reach the local hospital in time. The lights, the nurses, the cold metal, everything blurred into pain. When she woke up, a nurse smiled. "You have 2 very strong girls. They are small, but they are fighters." Relief and love washed over her. Nico and Naya, her miracle. They spent a month in the NICU. Maya slept in a chair, reading stories to them through the glass, making a silent promise. "I am here. I will never leave you." When they finally returned to her humble studio, she made a vow. She would give her daughters a decent life. She would be a mother. And that made her stronger than all of Jonathan Reed's empire. Interactive question. If you were in Maya's shoes, would you choose to stay in the big city and fight? Or would you escape to a quiet place like she did, to start from scratch? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. 3. The unexpected reunion, 8 years later. Jonathan Reed's life continued at its relentless pace. Private jets, power meetings, sterile luxury. His wealth had tripled since the day he fired Maya and walked away from a choice he never allowed himself to face. He told himself she had moved on, that maybe she hadn't kept the baby. But despite his success, the truth was the silence in his Madrid penthouse was deafening. The memory of Maya never disappeared. He had dismissed her as a business risk, but her absence had become a wound he couldn't close. He had built a wall of lies to keep winning. And then, without warning, she returned. Not by choice, but by accident. Jonathan was walking through JFK Airport, heading to another international summit, when he looked up and saw her, Maya. She looked different, stronger. Her hair pulled back, her face luminous. And she wasn't alone. 2 identical little girls, about 8 years old, walked beside her, laughing, clutching her coat like small moons orbiting a planet. And then he saw their eyes. Blue. Not just any blue. His blue. The air rushed out of his lungs. His phone slipped from his fingers, unnoticed. The girls were his. He didn't need a paternity test. He knew. It was undeniable. He tracked their steps, his heart beating like a war drum. He never thought he would see her again, much less with the living proof of everything he had abandoned. "Maya," he said, barely a whisper. She turned. Her eyes widened, but not with surprise, but with recognition. She was ready. Jonathan. His name was a sharp blade honed by 8 years of silence. He pointed at the girls. "They!" She didn't hesitate. "Yours." Both of them. He stood frozen as the girls tugged at her sleeve, asking who the strange man was. Maya ignored the question and turned to them, her voice calm and firm. Come on, girls, our gate is yet out of this one. They walked away without looking back. Jonathan remained frozen, not by the rejection, but by what he had seen. Not only the daughters he never knew he had, but the woman he had abandoned, now brighter, stronger, and completely out of his reach. That night, for the first time in his life, Jonathan Reed realized he hadn't just made a mistake. He had missed the chance to be a father. Reaction time. Do you think Maya was right to tell him the truth so coldly? Or should she have given him a chance to explain himself? Drop your comment before reading on. Don't forget to subscribe. 4. The search for forgiveness. The distant father. The next day, Jonathan returned to NYC. The silence of his penthouse was unbearable. He had spent 8 years believing he was invincible, but there, at that airport, he had learned the truth. And the truth had blue eyes and called someone else Mom. Jonathan did not disappear again. Within days, he located Maya. She lived in that small town near the Hudson Valley, just as she had always dreamed. She had founded a modest but respected publishing house for female writers. Brilliant voices. No luxury, but built with care. Just like her, he traveled there without calling. No private jet. Just him and the road. For a week, he parked near the girls' school, watching. He saw them come out, run into her arms. Nico, the analytic, and Nia, the dreamer. Maya would crouch down and let them crash into her. They were happy, untouched by the world he inhabited. He felt ashamed, lurking like a stranger, a voyeur in the life he had abandoned. One rainy afternoon, she saw him. Their eyes met through the windshield. Maya didn't flinch. She stared at him for a moment, closed her car trunk, and went inside. The next morning, Jonathan found a note in the mailbox of the property he had rented. Handwritten. You don't have the right to watch them from afar. If you want to be here, do it right. You won't get the easy way out. You earn it. I won't stop you, but I won't allow you to hurt them again. M. She hadn't closed the door. She had drawn a line of defense around her daughters. He understood. He didn't want the easy way out. He had come because regret was stronger than his pride. Jonathan Reed was ready to prove himself, not with money, but with presence. V. The slow reconstruction. Earning presence. Jonathan Reed never imagined that starting over would be so quiet. There were no dramatics, just long days of awkward silence and the slow work of earning a place in a life that didn't belong to him. He started discreetly, just as Maya had challenged him. He anonymously donated school supplies. He fixed the broken basketball hoop at the school. He helped where he could, without seeking recognition. One rainy day, leaving a bookstore, he saw Maya under an awning with her umbrella broken. Without thinking, he crossed the street and offered her his. She took it without a word. For a moment, she looked at him, but she only saw a man who wasn't trying to impress her, just holding an umbrella. That moment opened a small crack. Days later, she texted him the schedule for Nico and Nia's school play. No commentary, just information. He attended. He sat in the back row. He didn't approach. He just watched. He saw the girls, dressed as talking trees, smiling nervously. He saw Maya applauding and laughing. Over the weeks, things subtly shifted. They ran into each other more often. Once, she handed him Nia's forgotten lunch container without explanation, as if she had decided she could trust him with something. It wasn't affection, but something rarer. The reconstruction of faith. Then came the day that changed everything. Maya called him late. Can you pick them up from school tomorrow? I have a meeting. I'll text you the details. It was an act of trust, a fragile gift. The next day, he arrived early. When the girls came out, Nico saw him first. Are you the man from the play? Nia asked boldly. Jonathan knelt down to their height. Yes, that was me. Your mom asked for my help. "Do you have snacks?" Nico asked with her arms crossed. "I do now," he said, pulling 2 granola bars from his pocket. They accepted him. They didn't hold his hand, but they didn't run away either. When he dropped them off, Maya opened the door with an inquisitive look. Nico went inside, saying, "He brought snacks. Not bad." Maya let out a small laugh. It was short, almost involuntary. But it was real. From that day on, Jonathan became a consistent part of the routine. He helped with homework. He attended piano recitals. He was there, showing up, over and over again. The truth unveiled. The secret revealed. Jonathan never referred to himself as Dad. He let them decide who he was. And little by little, the girls opened up. One stormy evening, the girls and Maya arrived at his rented house, soaked. The power had gone out at their place. He made hot chocolate. He gave them dry clothes. They stayed the night. Just warmth. Being together. In those moments, Jonathan only thought about how good it felt to see Nia fall asleep with her head on his arm. He had walked away from the chance to be a father. Now, every moment was a step toward becoming one. One Sunday morning, Maya decided it was time. As the girls argued over breakfast music, she called them over. She sat with them on the floor. "There's something important I need to talk to you about. It's about Jonathan." She told them the truth. Not the painful details of the past, but the truth they deserved. That Jonathan was not just a friend. He was their biological father. That she had raised them alone because at the time, it had been the only safe option. The room fell silent. "He's our dad?" Nia whispered. Stunned. "Yes," Maya nodded. "Did he know about us?" Nico's question was sharper. "No, he didn't know until recently. I was hurt. And scared. I wanted to protect you. Maybe I was wrong not to tell him sooner, but I never stopped trying to do my best for you." There were tears, not of crying, but of raw emotion. Maya gave them space. That night, she called Jonathan and told him. "I thought I'd have to wait years for this moment," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." When the girls were ready, they decided. One Saturday, Nico handed him a drawing, a family portrait. She had written the names, Mom, Nico, Nia, and Jonathan. Afterward, Nia started calling him Dad without warning. Nico took longer. But one day, when Jonathan picked her up and held out his hand, she took it and said quietly, "Thanks, Dad." Jonathan was speechless, but he held her hand tighter and didn't let go. 7. The surrender of strength, the love of presence. Jonathan changed. He still worked, but remotely, slower. He let go of the travel. He had something more important than the next deal. He moved into a modest home a few blocks from Maya's. Maya watched him. She waited for the cracks, but they never came. He was different. Not perfect, but real. She didn't let her heart run ahead, but she did start to trust, to exhale. The deepest change came with a crisis. Maya collapsed. After testing, the diagnosis was a severe autoimmune disorder, aggravated by years of stress and exhaustion. For the first time, Maya had to let go. She couldn't do it all alone. Jonathan canceled everything, a multi-month merger. His assistant never heard him so calm. "My family comes first. Handle it." He moved into the hospital. He slept on the tiny couch. He woke up every time she moved. He learned her medication schedule. When she couldn't eat, he fed her soup. He, the man who had called her weak, now wiped Nia's cheek and helped Nico with math homework. One night, Maya took his hand. "You are not the man I knew years ago," he said quietly. "I wish I never had been." "You were scared," she whispered. "So was I. I still am. But I'm not going anywhere." A year passed. Slowly, tenderly. Maya's health improved. The girls grew. Jonathan had completely rooted himself in their lives, not as a shadow, but as a constant. Love was not an announcement. It was quiet presence. It was being where you were needed, even without being asked. Day 8. A new dawn, the meaningful ending. Spring arrived, not just in the blossoms, but in the feeling that something had thawed inside them. Jonathan had waited, not for her permission, but for her peace. He had been carrying something in his pocket for weeks. The moment came unexpectedly, on the anniversary of the day she had collapsed. He took them to a small, local restaurant. After dinner, as the girls drew on the tablecloth, Jonathan stood up, knelt beside Maya's chair, and took her hand. "I don't ask you to forget what happened," he said. "I don't ask you to pretend the pain wasn't real. I know what I did, and I will carry that truth for the rest of my life. But I also know what we've built since then, what we've fought for, who we've become. And I want to keep choosing that, every single day, for the rest of my life. I want to start here, with all of it. With you. With them. With all the complicated, beautiful truth." Then he opened the box. Inside, a simple, elegant ring. A gold band with 3 small diamonds set alongside the main stone. One for you, one for Nico, one for Nia, he said softly. Maya didn't cry. She just stared at him. Then at her daughters, who watched with hopeful eyes. She nodded. "Yes." "Yeah," she said. The girls cheered. "I knew it!" Nico yelled. Nia jumped up and hugged her mother. They didn't start over. They moved forward. Together. They learned to love in the open, to speak without fear, to build a life where no one had to carry the weight alone. Because in the end, family wasn't about blood or apologies. It was about presence, about choosing each other over and over again. And they did, every single day. Ike's, the new family and corporate architecture. Jonathan Reed and Maya Collins married in an intimate civil ceremony in a garden near the Hudson Valley. There was no press coverage, no corporate celebrities. Just them, Nico, Naya, and a few close friends, and Maya's family, who had returned to her life. It was a vow of presence, not of power. The ring, with its 3 diamonds, sparkled in the sun. Daily life, however, was not an instant fairy tale. The new family architecture required constant readjustments. The challenges of coexistence. Jonathan, the former titan who managed financial markets, had to learn to manage school schedules, the logistics of Nia's violin lessons, and Nico's robotics club. The man who never had to ask permission for anything now consulted every business trip, however brief, with Maya. Maya, for her part, had to learn to genuinely delegate. Her publishing house, Brilliant Voices, had grown enormously. It was no longer a survival project, but a thriving business with a real mission, amplifying the voices of female writers across the U.S. One day, Jonathan found Maya exhausted, her head in her hands, trying to reconcile printing deadlines with a flare-up of her autoimmune condition. "Maya," he said, kneeling beside her, "why haven't you asked me for help with this?" "It's my project, Jonathan," she replied with a sigh. "My strength. I'm afraid if you get involved in the finances, it will become an annex of Reed Capital." Jonathan took her hand. "Listen, I will never treat you as a weakness again, and your publishing house will never be my annex. It's a different empire, built with heart. Allow me to be your partner in logistics, not in vision. Permit me to lighten your load, not steal your light." She accepted. Together, they created a new, independently managed division within Reed Capital, whose sole purpose was to support the infrastructure of Brilliant Voices, negotiating better paper rates, optimizing distribution. Maya still made the creative and editorial decisions, but Jonathan's financial machinery was put at her service. not to dominate, but to protect her. The daughters and the two worlds. Nico and Nia adapted to having a present father. But the contrast between life in the Hudson Valley and the world of NYC was still visible. One afternoon, on a business trip to the city, Jonathan took them to his old luxury penthouse, now his occasional NYC residence. Nia was fascinated by the view and the private elevator. But Nico, always the more analytic one, felt uneasy. "Dad, why do you live in such a big house if you're only here a few days?" she asked. "It's too quiet." Jonathan smiled sadly. "You're right, my love. I built it for a man who only cared about silence and power. Now, I realize this silence is wasted without your laughter." Hiditi decided to convert the penthouse into the headquarters for the company's charitable foundation, dedicated to funding scholarship programs for women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. A clear dedication to Nico's dreams. He kept a modest downtown apartment for his stays, a symbol that he had let go of empty luxury for the authentic warmth of their home in the valley. Interactive question. What do you think of Jonathan's decision to convert his luxury penthouse into a foundation? Do you believe it's a genuine sign of change, or just a gesture to impress Maya and the girls? Share your opinion below. Don't forget to like. X. The last corporate ghost. Jonathan's new life soon clashed with the ghosts of his past. Reed Capital was still a giant, and his recent slowdown and his marriage to his ex-assistant were subjects of corporate gossip. Daniel Sykes, his former most trusted partner, and a man who had secretly competed for Maya's position years ago, saw an opportunity. Daniel attempted to force a vote on the board of directors, arguing that Jonathan had lost his killer instinct and his focus. Jonathan has turned Reed Capital into a personal charity office. His private life is compromising performance, Daniel argued before the board at the annual meeting in Boston. Jonathan walked into the room with a calmness he hadn't felt in years. Daniel had expected the old Jonathan, the one who responded to attacks with cold aggression. But this Jonathan was different. "Daniel is right about one thing," Jonathan began, his voice echoing in the room. "I have lost focus, but I haven't lost vision." He projected two figures on the screen: Reed Capital's growth over the past 8 years and the growth in the last year since he focused on family. The growth was the same, driven by a smarter, not more brutal, strategy. Then he projected a picture of Nico and Nia at their robotics class. "For years, my only metric of success was money," he continued. "Today, my metric is sustainability, loyalty, and long-term impact. I built an empire from nothing. I know how it works. But Daniel's mistake is believing that to win, you have to sacrifice your personal life." Jonathan unveiled an audacious plan to merge a portion of Reed Capital with a green tech holding, a move Daniel had vetoed as too ethical and not fast enough. It was a masterful move that would secure stable and responsible growth for the next decade. "I am a man with a new compass," Jonathan concluded. "And this compass not only guides me, but secures the future of Reed Capital against any ego. Daniel, you can keep your killer instinct, or you can join a strategy that will last. Weakness is not loving your family. Weakness is not knowing what you are fighting for." The board voted. Daniel Sykes was dismissed. Jonathan had not only saved his empire, he had transformed it into a legacy that Nico and Nia could admire. 11. The legacy of presence. The meaningful ending. Another 5 years passed. Jonathan and Maya's marriage was not perfect, but authentic. A mix of long conversations, resolved disagreements, and the constant commitment to choose each other. Nico and Nia, now teenagers, were the anchor of that relationship. Nico, the analytic one, approached her father to talk about code and business ethics, and dreamed of becoming an engineer. Nia, the dreamer, followed her mother to book presentations, dreaming of publishing her first novel. Maya and Jonathan's legacy was not measured in the figures of Reed Capital or the bestsellers of brilliant voices. It was measured in the sound of laughter in their Hudson Valley home, in the dinners where the four of them debated without fear, and in the tranquility Maya had found on Jonathan's face. One day, as they watched their daughters walk out together for a school event, Maya rested her head on Jonathan's shoulder. "What do you think of all this?" she asked softly. "Of the life we have now?" Jonathan didn't have to think about it. "It's a gift I don't deserve," he said, "but one I am willing to earn every day." They stood in silence, watching the horizon over the Hudson Valley rooftops. The man who once called his love weak and utterly useless had learned the most important lesson. True strength is not the ability to build a fortune alone, but the willingness to dismantle pride to build a life together. Maya hadn't returned successful despite her loneliness, but because of the strength she discovered when she had to carry everything. And Jonathan, by surrendering to presence, had finally understood it. They had lost 8 years, but they had gained an eternity. The end. Deeper reflection. The story of Maya and Jonathan is a reminder that it is never too late to change your legacy. The decision to be a father and a partner is worth more than any Buadio Titan of industry title. If this story has moved you, please share it and help us grow. Hit the bell for more impactful content. Thank you for reading.